Villains can be a hit or miss, which is completely dependent on how the writers present them in the story. You can have a villain who sees themselves as the hero from a certain perspective.
For scraps. Your planet was on the brink of collapse. I'm the one who stopped that. This universe is finite, its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist.
You can have a villain who's just pure evil. Or you can have a villain who was this unsung hero fallen tragically into a black hole but is later redeemed in the end.
Impressive. Most impressive.
Many more examples out there, but these are probably the more common types of writing you see for a villain in literature or film. Heroes thrive off compelling villains, or a villain that feels like an actual threat towards our hero. They're the biggest obstacle for our protagonist in most cases to overcome and fulfill their ambitions. If you do not have a compelling villain, well, we have a story in which the hero has no threat. No threat means no tension means boring. Having a great villain not only gives the audience a desire to care for the story in general, but it pushes the hero to the limit, allows for the character to grow and develop, whether it's their skills, mentality, or what they're going through emotionally. Let me share some popular examples of great writing for a villain. Thanos, a villain who views himself as a hero in his story, a man willing to bring balance across the universe by limiting half of humanity, so he can stop hearing the cries of hunger and dread. They called him a madman. Each film in the Infinity Saga has some sort of connection to Thanos, indirectly or directly. Having the Avengers split put them at a disadvantage, giving Thanos the room to execute the plan and harvest each Infinity Stone. And with the snap of his fingers, he wiped out half of living things across the universe. The MCU made Thanos a complex character, gave a little backstory to his motivations. It's not even comparable to some lackluster villains we've got in the past. Hell, even now, they did not disappoint on the generated hype, and I appreciate that. What I don't appreciate is a complete retreat from his character's progression in Infinity War, and bringing in a Thanos who has zero recollection of prior events.
I don't even know who you are.
Hans Landa from Inglourious Basterds is the main antagonist and is an agent of Nazi Germany. Throughout the film, Landa is referred to as the Jew Hunter. He's a villain who is pure evil for his own benefit that enjoys killing for the sake of being on the victory side of history. In a scene where he has captured Aldo and his little man, he's aware of Aldo's plan to blow up the cinema into smoke and ash, killing Hitler in the process. Hans pictured the Nazis' defeat inevitable, and Aldo's plan was his parachute out of this eventual crashing plane. In return, he does not get hanged for his crimes, but receives benefits for his surrender. At the end of the film, Aldo outsmarts Hans and carves a swastika on his forehead as a permanent scar, something Hans cannot remove. Hans has a clear-cut personality. He sees every situation as what can he gain from this. He's clever, methodical, and a big threat to the bastards, as he could have easily fumbled their plan and sentenced them to execution, but he took that very situation and assessed many possible outcomes, and it worked.
You know something, you bitch? I think this just might be my masterpiece.
Darth Vader, the most iconic villain in the history of cinema, whenever he enters the scene, is spine-tingling from just hearing his cold breath. He's a Sith that is focused at the task at hand and a leader who respects his comrades. Well, until they screw up more than once and get choked in front of him. The story of Vader is seen as this once great Jedi in a dark path, creating himself into this machine of power and loneliness. He no longer has his wife nor his kids. All he can do is serve to this very cause he was groomed into following, until his son set him free from his pain and brought balance to the Force, fulfilling the destiny he was always meant to fulfill. Obviously, the initial intent was not to make a sympathetic villain at the start, but even in New Hope, you saw his power and tone. He wasn't someone you'd want to go out ice cream with. When you're given a command from him, you follow. In Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, we learn more about this big, cold, evil man who was more than just a man in a suit, but a father who fell and lost his way. And a final example I like to discuss is the Joker from The Dark Knight. He's a villain who wants to prove a point, that society can be just as bad as him. Obviously, he isn't physically stronger than Batman, not by a long shot. It's his mental game which is a struggle for Batman. Batman killing him is the only solution, but Batman does not kill. That's his only rule. The Dark Knight encapsulates a mental warfare between the two, then a more physical one. Two-Face is the victim of Joker's game. Joker has his plan B in motion when Batman is still fighting his plan A, and is unaware of the damage Joker has already done. Joker in the film has zero morals nor billions of dollars at his disposal. His mind games are his weapon. He's clearly someone who is not satisfied with the criminals in Gotham being more hungry for money than an actual breed that would stand against Gotham's elites and Batman, and so he burns the pile of money and reveals his true motive.
All you care about is money. This town is
deserves a better class of criminal.
So many great examples of compelling villains who've been executed to perfection, and I wanted to dissect what makes a villain unique. Each example are similar in a sense that they're villains who are opposition for our heroes. One villain believes he's the hero of his story and is only doing what's best for the future. The other simply loves chaos, and the other wants what's best for himself, a much more selfish motive than of a cause. Lastly, one of them is a villain who's simply trapped in a cold body.
Look what I did to this city with a few drums of gas and a couple of bullets.
This brings me to Ozai, who I consider to be very underappreciated in a way. With the show filled with arcs and morals, Ozai carried the more simple form of writing for a villain who's only in it for more power and burning down the entire world. Simplicity for a character isn't bad, by the way. It's merely dependent on how the character is used in your story. Only you have the power to make the simplest entity into a diamond. The show perfectly utilizes Ozai. He's not physically present in the show a whole lot, and given his simple motive of world domination, the show did a great job giving the audience an edge of suspense, wondering what this massive threat to the world's balance looks like. Ozai's impact on the story is through other characters' frame of mind. For Aang, being in stasis for 100 years has a serious task at hand, taking down the Fire Lord before Sozin's Comet, which grants all firebenders unlimited power, thus ending the 100-Year War. The show purposely sets up Aang at a disadvantage. He's simply a kid who only knows airbending once it's freed from the ice and has a year to master all the elements before the comet comes. Now let's have a history lesson. It took Roku 12 years to master all the elements. Now imagine being in Aang's position. The Fire Lord, who's seen as this powerful firebender, is waiting for the comet to arrive to destroy and turn the world to ash. And you have a 12-year-old kid who has a year to master all elements and gain knowledge on how to control the avatar state. Ozai's motives and power and secrecy has put Aang in a handicapped position, given the many obstacles that have been bestowed at the forefront, such as Zuko and Azula. The two biggest contrasting characters, one feels she is privileged while the other has to claw and work for their honor. Seeing the two siblings be so far from one another exhibits the abusive parenting Ozai used on his kids. He mentally broke Zuko, putting him down and leaving a permanent scar on his face for simply speaking out on what's right. As for Azula, she's been gifted all her life, feeding her negative and cynical energy. Ozai viewed her as a prodigy and Zuko as a burden. Ozai spoiled her into believing she was above all, teaching her tactics which were cruel and sadistic. Azula became the child Ozai wanted. In a scene when Ozai is kissing up to his father Azulan, he boasts about Azula's proficiency and cleverness. Given his expression and tone of voice, Ozai feels so proud because now he has a true successor and leverage for him to take the throne, since Iroh's bloodline has been broken. Azula noticed the ass kissing and ordered Ozai to kill his own son as a punishment for his defiance.
Use me. You dare suggest I betray Iroh? I think Iroh has suffered enough. But you? Your punishment has scarcely begun!
Ozai was gonna go through with it until Ursa, Zuko's mom, proposed a plan in which would make Ozai the Fire Lord and Zuko's life spared. But for this act of treason, Ozai banished Ursa from the Fire Nation, leaving Zuko alone with the life of nothing but abusive parenting from his father. The writers did an exquisite job at conveying Ozai to be this formidable foe who really doesn't have any moral principles. He'll use any tactics necessary to come out on top. His only holy grail is power. Having this desire in him shaped other characters in the show, and this is what great villains do. They push other characters to be at an equal playing level than them, or they add layers to a character, questioning their own moral beliefs. In Avatar, Ozai forced Aang to train 5 times faster compared to other avatars, to even be at a fighting level against the Fire Lord.
You are right. I do have the power. I have all the power in the world!
Many instances where this destiny puts Aang in doubt of himself, if he can really bring an end to this 100-year war, if he's ready to let go of his family to finally bring peace and harmony to the world. Near the end of season 3, Aang is very heavy on his no-kill rule, and refuses to kill Ozai in their eventual clash, even despite learning Ozai's horrific plan to turn the entire Earth Kingdom to ash. He hears echoes from his own gang and Zuko that killing the Fire Lord is his only option. When he was facing Ozai one-on-one, there was a moment that he could have easily killed Ozai. A perfect opportunity, but he just doesn't do it. Even though Ozai was in a very vulnerable position. But he refuses to break his one rule and redirects the lightning up in the sky. Luckily for Aang, prior to his confrontation with Ozai, he went on a spiritual journey meeting a lion turtle, which granted him the power which gave him the ability to take one's bending away. Remember, Ozai has never met the Avatar face to face. He simply needed a heinous plan to push Aang into a black hole, questioning his kill rule, creating a journey for Aang to find a solution to this predicament. Another example of Ozai being a villain who allows for some sort of progression in other characters is Zuko. Ozai clearly left a major mark on Zuko's life. He punished him for simply being who he is. Zuko has carried this burden on himself during his quest to find the Avatar. Struggled a lot mentally if being the kid his father always wanted him to be was worth it. What made Zuko's journey to realization possible was Iroh. The different structures in parenting was what shifted Zuko's character. Ozai's abusive nature only brought out the scarred version of Zuko, the more darker side. Meanwhile, Iroh's wisdom and loving side was what Zuko needed. Thus the conflict within him rose, pressured in distinguishing what's right and wrong. When it came into the moment of finally expressing himself on who he is, he confronts Ozai, telling him the truth and lecturing him on how Iroh has been more of a father than Ozai ever was, and joining the Avatar to defeat him.
Your uncle has gotten to you, hasn't he?
The show took Ozai as a character who was treated as the final boss in a video game, although his character wasn't complex like Thanos, where there is actual backstory to his motives. Having him as a recurring character, well, I wouldn't be making this video, nor would I ever put him on a pedestal as a great villain. He'd simply be a statue of a dense figure. Whatever Zuko and Azula say about Ozai is at face value. Neither are sugarcoating. He is a terrible father in how he treated his 2 children and his wife.
Well, that sweet little kid grew up to be a monster. And the worst father in the history of fathers.
In the finale, it did not disappoint on how strong Ozai is. Yes, he is powered by the comet, but that's simply to keep him at a level above Aang during this fight. Until Aang's chakra was realigned and went God mode on Ozai and turning the fight into a reverse cat and mouse. This show really made us despise Ozai in a good way. He possessed qualities and traits which made him the most hated character in the entire series. Like I said, in a good way, and that's brilliant. Rooting for his downfall, his defeat is all more satisfying. Aang took all his power away, a power Ozai spoke so highly on and was craving for more, and the cherry on top in his defeat was his own son who he abused mentally and physically and classified him as a burden in his family is now sitting on his very throne, ruling the Fire Nation. That's a chef kiss ending if you'd ask me.
Brilliant.
I really wanted to make this video because Ozai is a unique villain who gets overlooked in the show. And with a show that's filled with a lot of arcs and moments, I'm surprised he slept on. This was just something I wanted to cover, so yeah, goodbye.